Hey, this is Connor. Welcome back to the Courageous Nerd YouTube channel for another interview. Joining me this time is actor Antonio Cayonne. We chatted about his upcoming roles in Hallmark's new film, Christmas in Evergreen, Bells Are Ringing, as well as appearing in Disney Plus's upcoming reboot of The Mighty Ducks. You can follow Courageous Nerd on Twitter @_Courageous Nerd, as well as on Facebook and Instagram @Courageous Nerd, all in lowercase. If you enjoyed this interview or any of the others on the channel, please be sure to like and subscribe. Great. So welcome and thank you for taking the time to do this.
My pleasure. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Great. And so I've been reading that so you play Elliot in Hallmark's new film, Christmas in Evergreen, Bells Are Ringing. And obviously you also played the character in an earlier film for Hallmark. So how have you found the experience of working with Hallmark on multiple projects?
Working with Hallmark has been great for me. In fact, I've obviously done these 2 Christmas and Evergreens, but I've probably put together, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 Hallmarks in total. And I've also been pretty lucky to be on a couple that recur. So one of the shows that I've done is called Darrow and Darrow, with Kimberly Williams-Paisley and Wendy Malick and Tom Cavanaugh as the leads. And beyond the fact that I get to work with the 3 of them, and that's just like joy of all joys, there's something really beautiful about getting to be part of several installations, because it gives you space to allow ideas to grow, characters to grow, relationships to grow, things get richer. And so we certainly found that. I find that in Darrow and Darrow, and I found that in Christmas and Evergreen, most especially. Last year was Christmas and Evergreen 3, and the lead story was Paul Green and Maggie Lawson. Maggie playing someone who just came to Evergreen as a writer to kind of see what this whole town is about, this town where it's like perpetually Christmas, and they fell in love. But Rukiya and I, who play Hannah and Elliot, we were the love story. We were the second love story. And so that was our first time meeting and getting to know each other, and we had this cool opportunity to play best friends who fall in love. And so now, in part 4 here, we're tasked with this really exciting opportunity to play out that relationship, to see how much further it goes. Like, it's different when you've just met somebody, both in real life and on camera. You've just met somebody and it's the first month of a romance. This is different. These are people who are like, into their 30s, who've been friends since they were 5 years old, and they're navigating a more nuanced type of relationship, type of adult relationship. So it's been really exciting from that point of view.
Yeah, and you kind of were briefly mentioning this. So how different or similar, like just thinking of people who have been following along these installments, like how different or similar do you think this new film is to the previous films?
It has a pretty, I think, of course, I haven't seen a final edit of it, so what I perceive is definitely from the inside with regards to the way we've been working, but it feels like it has a tonal difference from last year. Last year's director, Sean McNamara, took it in one direction. He had done part 2 and part 3, so he really had a sense of how the world worked, how the characters worked, how people converse with each other. This one has a new director. This is Linda Lisa Hayter, and so not only is this one of her first 2 films for Hallmark as a director, but also she brings a different perspective by offering a female gaze. We're now we're just looking at the lens, looking through the lens through a new set of eyes. Sean saw it one way, Lisa sees it another. Both of them are still in the town of Hallmark, but perhaps there are different things that they kind of pull out and bring into focus. And I feel like we've certainly experienced that on set with Linda Lisa. She was able, I think, to help us dive deeper into kind of the intimacy of the characters and the intimacy of the world, and why Evergreen is really this magical place. And certainly that was informed also, because we're in COVID, the writers are tasked with not writing scenes that have 40 people in them. And so they have this new opportunity as well to write scenes that have 2 people that go a little maybe further and deeper than they have in the past, or that they've been allowed to in the past. And so I think all of those conspire to make this film hopefully a little bit richer in terms of getting to know the people and falling in love with them.
Yeah, and I guess in terms of an acting perspective, what excited you about going back to a character you'd already played?
Yeah, that is a real gift, especially in Hallmark. My experience with Hallmark up until this point has always been, you're dropped in, it takes 3 weeks to shoot, and then you never see that character again. And so you don't really have time to, like, it's an old sweater, you don't really have time to break it in. And so getting to go back and find Elliot again, and find Elliot in relationship to Hannah, for me, I was able to bring a lot more of my own grounded self to the day to day, where I didn't feel like there were times last year where I felt as though I was trying to achieve something, make sure this scene works a certain way, check off boxes, which is not a way that you ever want to be thinking, but I was just kind of in it for a short period of time, and I was saying to myself, like, boy, I hope I do this. I hope I do this justice. Whereas this year, it felt like I had a little bit more room to explore and to make mistakes and to fail and find discoveries. It just felt like there was a little bit of room to breathe in it, and I think that largely that's afforded to me by being able to come back and revisit this character and revisit the qualities of the relationship that Rukiya and I had questions about.
Yeah, and again, just obviously mentioning Rukiya Bernard from Van Helsing is your co-star in the film.
Yeah.
And how has your experience of working with her been?
I mean, nothing short of amazing. I couldn't have gotten luckier, I think. It's funny, Rukiya and I, we did not know each other growing up. We're both from Toronto, and we had mutual friends, like, within the same, we're within the same age bracket, have friends within the same age, and in fact, walked the halls at the exact same theater school a couple of years apart and never crossed paths. So I think there's some, like, added magic to meeting your new co-star and finding out that your life is a series of sliding doors that just barely missed each other, and here we are.
Sounds like fate.
Yeah, it felt that way, and like our family structures are very similar. We live blocks from each other. Like there's just a lot of synchronicity, a lot of synergy that has gone into, like, getting us to know each other. But honestly, the thing that Rukiya shows up ready to work with a willingness and an excitement to dig and dig and dig, and I certainly espouse those same values. And so it was really nice to when you go for a run with somebody and you don't have to keep pace, you can both let loose and go. That's kind of what it felt like working together.
Yeah, and I suppose in a more general sense, when you're cast as a character, what aspects do you start to think about first? Is you think that the personality or the backstory or mannerisms? Like, what kind of crosses your mind?
I guess I have different approaches based on different projects. I've certainly used mannerisms and physicality as ways to get into characters in the past. I don't find that I do that right now that much with the work that I'm looking at. I often look at the why of the character, like with specifically, I guess, with Hallmark and with a few other sort of like television projects that I get to audition for, or that I get to play. You're not always given a depth of backstory. You get to develop it. You're not always given a depth of relationship. You get to develop it. And so you have these clues that are left on the page by the writer, and you have these clues that are offered to you by the director. And I say clues because I want to believe that they have written them as a treasure map. And then if I walk the map properly, I'll be able to find stones and turn them over and find keys and go off on a quest and unlock a door. So I'm often trying to figure out why something is written the way it's written, why 2 people speak when they speak, where they speak, how they speak to each other, so that I can then start to work backwards and say, well, if he has said this, it might mean that he believes in this. Now, what would that look like if he believes in it? What would it look like if he doesn't believe in it? What would it look like if that belief gets challenged? So that's kind of my right now. That's the approach that I play with the most frequently. I've certainly had other ways to get in, but with this script and with a lot of the Hallmark that I'm doing, that's something that really excites me around the writing.
Yeah, and I guess in terms of your own sensibilities, obviously, I think Hallmark attracts a specific audience or demographic. But would you
Mhm.
say you're more attracted to like the wholesome kind of character, or more of a darker villain type?
Um, Both? Question mark.
Mm,
I think it depends.
yeah.
I can honestly say I never saw myself ending up in Hallmark. I didn't know about it, so
Mm,
I had no like expectation. I didn't really know what kind of material they put out
yeah.
5 years ago or 10 years ago. And so now that I'm in it, I'm starting to discover things about it. Um, and some of the things I discover I love. Some of the things I discover and I go like, oh, I wonder if there's room for that to be different. I wonder if
Mm,
there's room for growth in that point of view. And like, who would I be if I didn't have that thought about any project I was on? Um, from early days, I was always told by like acting coaches and mentors and stuff, you're the nice guy.
yeah.
You're like you walk into a room and people just want to like you, so be okay with that. And in my real life, I am the nice guy, but I think as actors, we're always like, what can I play that's so different than myself?
Mm,
And so I'm an actor. I have that same curiosity to go into the darkness because as a human, I'm a whole human. I have my highs and my lows and my lights and my darks, and I want to explore all those. But if I follow the green lights on the road, the green lights are leading me towards wholesome, nice guy characters, and like, I'll take it.
yeah.
It's nice to show up.
Yeah, and I guess it's kind of looking in a different area of your career. You've done a lot of television, and I've seen, like for example, some of the shows I found that you were in Prison Break, X-Files, Chesapeake Shores. I guess were you, I guess for those and the others, were you a fan of any before you got the guest spot on it?
Prison Break. So what's interesting about both Prison Break and X Files is
Mm,
that I got to be a part of it after it had had a full successful run and then went on hiatus for a long period of time.
right,
Right,
the
so X Files
reboots.
ran for like a decade or something with Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, and I
Yeah,
was a fan, obviously. Like who I it was the best show on television.
yeah,
And then it's years later they reboot it, and I book a role in it, and so I'm splitting my time on set trying not to be a fan, trying to like be in it and do my job, but also going like, oh my god, how cool is this? This is what I get to do.
mm,
And same thing with Prison Break. Like when Prison Break first came out, that first season on Fox, Wentworth Miller covered in tattoos, like I was
yeah,
in. I loved the mystery of it. I loved like, it's pre-Memento. It was so exciting. And then when they rebooted it years later, it was nice to be a part of it. Um,
mm,
that one for me it wasn't the same. It tracked differently,
yeah.
partially because of the role that I had, partially because of the story that got told. Like after season one, once they broke out of prison, that I kind of fell off it. But that first year was captivating for me, and so it was
Yeah.
really exciting just to be part of that legacy.
Right, and I've heard that another upcoming project of yours is the Mighty Ducks reboot for
Yeah,
Disney Plus. So I guess how much pressure is there in approaching a project that has a legacy or a beloved aspect attached to it?
I think in some ways there's a lot of pressure. I'm lucky with the Mighty Ducks. So
Mm,
Mighty Ducks is a kids show, and
yeah,
the main stars are 12, 13, 14, 15 year olds. And
mm,
so pressure's on them.
yeah,
And the kids that they have cast can handle the pressure. In fact, I don't even think they understand that there's a pressure. Partially because they didn't grow up quacking and saying ducks fly together and wanting to be on Bombay's team, right? Like that
mm,
was our generation. For them, like they're sort of coming to this brand new, which is great because they bring a fresh perspective to it for free. The pressure's not on me. I get to play. I'm aged up now, so I play the dad,
mm,
and so I have this really cool opportunity to play this dad who puts a little bit too much pressure on his daughter, um,
right,
which is really nice. I grew up playing sports, and my parents certainly weren't like that. But I had friends who, like, I watched them crack under the pressure of needing to be great when we were playing like inconsequential games of soccer.
mm,
And so it's been nice to explore why a parent would behave that way, and that it's not about their competitive nature, and it's not about being mean. It's about wanting the best for their kids, but not being able to read the room.
Yeah, and I guess obviously thinking of what we've already talked about as far as your projects, if anyone wanted to find out more information, where could they look?
I try to keep my website up to date,
Sure.
but I have a tendency to write more about kind of where I'm at day to day and what my life is than I do touting projects.
Yeah.
That said, between there and my Instagram, those are the two places where people would be able to find out the most information about me.
Right.
And like I said, like I work as an actor,
Mm.
but it's a slice of the pie. My full pie is I have a family. I'm a dad. I co-own restaurants with a fantastic group of friends, and so I spend a ton of time doing that. I do a lot of writing, working on writing a TV show with another one of my best buds, and so I kind of have a lot of balls in the air on that side, and then I'm also an activist to some extent. I don't even know if I can call myself that, because I look at people like Kendrick Sampson, and he's an activist, and so he makes me feel like maybe I'm a fraud. But certainly, I spend a lot of my time thinking about the world that I want to pass down to the next generation, and what my
Yeah.
role in it is, and how I can advocate, and that's more so what you'll find on my Instagram. Every so often, you'll see smatterings of I'm doing this job, but it's healthy doses of each, I think, in order to keep me afloat.
Right. And this is actually the last question I've got here. And obviously, we're in the middle of the pandemic, and
Mhm.
it's not a great time. So I guess if you could offer advice to fans of your work, or of you personally, like what do you think it would be?
I mean, more than anything, take care of each other. I remember reading pretty early on. There was a there was actually a photo that was taken of, I think, a mural in New York City when the streets were bare. It looked like an absolute ghost town.
Mm.
And I paraphrasing the quote, I can't remember exactly how it was written, but it essentially said that wearing a mask is the greatest act of kindness. Um, and uh, I remember reading that and immediately taking it to heart. I just thought, I don't really care what you believe in. You can believe something's real, you can believe it's not, but if there is enough evidence out there in the world, and there are enough people that are asking you, would you be a little bit uncomfortable to guarantee my comfort and safety? I,
Mm.
I have to believe that I'm a person that would do that. And certainly, as far as the pandemic goes, I have been and I will be. And yeah, and so when I look around at the people around me, and perhaps people who are interested in my career, who were following me on Instagram or listen to what I have to say, a lot of what I'm interested in is how do you show up for the person next to you? How do you
Mm.
tend your own garden and make sure that your garden is bountiful and you have fruits that are growing and you're enriching yourself? But also, how do you look at the person next door and say, "Hey, I have a rake. Would you like to borrow it?" I just think that more than ever, this has highlighted the need um, to look across the aisle and see a human being that may not be okay, and be willing to do something with the platform that you have.